Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super Fantified. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Demon Lord 2099, Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I talked about this last episode, how I was not expecting the storyline to go down the route that Veltol is streaming. And it's so interesting, because if you've never watched Viral Hit, or read the webtoon, it's so interesting because that has a very there's a meta-ness to it that's so interesting, because I don't watch a lot of series that kind of deal in this realm of things, but this is about live streaming, and she's talking about right, you need to be careful not to say this or that so you don't get banned, and the whole setup of because he doesn't have a familia, he can't play certain video games, but he can play older games, and she has very old setups that he could use to live stream and stuff. It's so interesting. I even love the game they use. It's called BS, but it's Bloody Spill It or something like that. Obviously, very homage-y, an homage of sorts, or rip-offy, however you want to phrase it, of a Front Software game, specifically Dark Souls. But with a title like that, you're like, well, it's got to be Bloodborne-esque. But either way. And the whole them being very difficult games, I was like, I love that so much. But anyway, the reason why I was making the Viral Hit comparison, because that whole thing, it kind of deals with live streaming too, but it really heavily deals with a lot of the inside baseball of how you make revenue live streaming wise, but also when you edit stuff down and the guidelines you have to follow. It's really inside baseball, which I'm as a person who does put stuff on YouTube, I appreciated that story even more when I started reading, because I was like, oh, this is super inside baseball. And I was like, maybe from the outside perspective, I think you can still appreciate it, but I think when you're inside it, you kind of get it. And I watch enough live streams I don't watch a lot of live streams, but I watch enough to know the meta of live streaming and stuff like that. So it's just really neat, and seeing him, as they were talking about last episode, of kind of getting his worship up, that people his notoriety makes him stronger and stronger. So he has a very interesting perspective online, where he's just kind of, I think it was Makina was why do you kind of egg on your haters? And it's well, it might have been Makina, it might have been Takahashi who says it, but the whole element of, it's kind of all press is good. Good press and bad press is all good press, because it's both the haters and the people who enjoy me, I feed off their emotions, so the more heated they get, and especially towards each other, it all works in the end. So it's kind of that nice perspective to have online, I guess, is any engagement is good engagement, which isn't always the case, but the surface level to that, without going into the minutia of it, just surface level wise, I think that's somewhat a good mindset to have of you could look at it as the profitability of, well, even negative interaction with your material still benefits you. So I even love they're oh, are you mad? And he's like, no, I'm not mad. And he was just he says something in the chat was yeah, he's definitely mad or something like that. But it's yeah, and him having so much fun, and Takahashi telling Makina not to interfere or make any noise, don't even go into the living room while he's live streaming. But yeah, he works his numbers up, and he goes through all three of the games and apparently beats them. And he's like, oh yeah, I was kind of feeling a little disheartened, but he's just really enjoying it, and just doing the streamer thing of you see at one point he got beat by a boss and he's covering his face out of frustration, but you're is he really frustrated, or is he playing it up for the camera? Probably a little bit of both. So once again, it's just one of those meta things of oh, that's so weird, but also so fun, and I just wasn't expecting that to be the storyline for this character in this story. Also thought it was so interesting, the whole machina of it all. Multiple things. One, her in the opening of the episode, when Takahashi is because Makina is this is a job that is so risky and unstable. The Demon Lord, Veltol, deserves a job that is good and stable, and it's oh yeah. But then Takahashi's oh, he has a good voice and he looks nice, and then Makina is well, yes, all those elements about his talents are true, but still, she was she had a reservation because she wants the best for her lord. But it's like, yeah, she has the best of intentions, and once again, she's like his number one fan. Obviously, her loyalty and dedication has persisted 500 years. So, but as we saw last episode, we kind of understand where that loyalty stems from. Granted, we don't know what Veltol's like relationship was with the other five, whether they the five dark peers. But also, like, she's so used to living alone that for whatever reason she didn't think about Veltol being there, because her natural byproduct is to walk around naked. More power to people who do it, especially ladies. I've never been the type to just like, I'm gonna walk around my house naked. I guess because I've just rarely ever lived alone, so I've never had that. But that's not my natural instinct, just to walk around naked. I mean, it's like, I'm sure, like, hey, free balling, it's cool, but that's just never been my thing. I wonder if, whatever the case may be. Either way, and she's like apologizing. He's like, no, it wasn't anything unsightly. In fact, your body's in great shape for one of my 6 dark peers. He's like, but obviously it's nowhere near mine. And she's just kind of like, thank you. So just little stuff like that, and being happy for her lord as he's kind of prospering, and like I said, his numbers are going up, getting promoted. Like Takahashi did a lot of behind the scenes stuff, reaching out to her contacts, paying for the first promotional stuff for him, and got his numbers up. So I'm curious to see how often this through line of him streaming comes up. Like, is it always going to be like will it ever be there might be some main plot points revolving around it, or maybe it'll just always be a background thing that comes up from time to time. So, I mean, the more he gets his numbers up, the more powerful he gets. So he needs his name and reputation to spread. So I'm assuming this is going to be like your typical streamer thing, where you're going to eventually get, some sponsor deals, and that's going to put your name out there more. You're going to be moving on to different enterprises that you want to maybe start your own business or do this and that. I wonder, will he ever eventually, and it feels like eventually you got to get Makina into the fold just to take advantage of that situation. I feel like that might be something Takahashi might say later on down the road. We'll have to wait to see how that plays out, but it feels like that might be a through line this might tackle, but maybe not. The thing I wasn't expecting tying into all of this would be Veltol running into Graham and talking to him, and we get a little more into Graham's backstory. We learn why he is, the hero that he is. He had I think it was his little sister that was sick, and he went to go get some medicine. And one of the Demon Lord's armies, the Lizard Men, that was under one of his 6 dark peers, ended up like burning his house down, and so that set him on his path. And it is the thing of, it's always been a tit for tat situation of, right, you killed mortals, in fact you killed my family, but it is also like, yeah, but Graham has also killed quite a few immortals and loyal vassals to Veltol too. So it's always been this tit for tat situation. We find out it's like, oh, are you an immortal? And he's like, no, I have eternal youth, but I'm not immortal. And I'm like, that is an interesting distinction, because the immortals had the ability to heal from wounds. He's forever young, but Graham is human enough that he probably doesn't have the regenerative abilities an immortal does. But yeah, the goddess in this universe, was it Meldia? She granted him this eternal youth as a reward for his accomplishments. And so, and he talks about like the irony of it's that thing, you live long enough to become the villain type of situation to some extent, but not really. But essentially he was the hero, and now like it was no longer the wars against the immortals. Eventually it became mortals fighting mortals, the same very mortals he fought to protect from Veltol. And it becomes this situation of, you live long enough, and then eventually people start getting weary of you, this person, this warrior who's been around. And so he got ostracized from the places that he looked after. I think it's also the thing of, you're heralded a certain way until people start getting weary of, like, yeah, should we really have this person around accumulating all this power? It could be out of fear, out of jealousy, a combination of all that make people turn on him. And so he's marched through the world across so many events that have happened in this world. He's seen them firsthand, and that's where he is. For him, he feels like there is no hero in this world because there's really no place for it. So we also find out that as we can suspect, because immortals look just like mortals, they don't look that different. It turns out that immortals, he's like, for the most part, immortals were always, they were mortals at one point in time. He's like, basically either magic, curses, diseases. There were some other things he was saying like are usually contributing factors to why a mortal becomes an immortal. I am curious, is he part of that few percentage of more immortals that were just immortals to begin with, or does he know any people who are already never were mortals who became immortals and were just straight up immortals? I'm curious about that. But Graham asked him about why he decided to try, world domination. And for him, it's like, I wanted to create true peace by world domination. And it's like, it's that oxymoron of like, how can you create true peace? Because that would never be like a real peace under like, you will always be someone dominated. And that will always lead to friction because there's always going to be people who fight to resist that. But for him, it's like, from his perspective, it is the cycle of the weak, always battling it out and wanting to basically tear someone down. And it's like, right, you've seen that yourself firsthand, Graham, And he just kind of, because he's coming from the perspective of that is that nature of kind of being weary and wanting to tear down someone with power. It's like, that's something in every living being, mortal, immortal alike. Every being has that in them. And so it's a very, like, I guess you could almost look at it as, the question is, do you think Veltol is being realistic in that regard, or is that him being extremely cynical, whereas Graham's coming at it from the perspective of, no, I don't think that is the case, and even if it was, that's not the right way to handle it. But it was interesting. Obviously, it's like a difference of philosophies, and Veltol being like, I guess we can't agree. He was like, yeah, we came to that conclusion like 500 years ago, but thanked him for like the meal and the food. And then for Veltol, it's like, Graham had talked about there not being any heroes, but he's like, you are like the hero still exists by definition because I exist. So, so kind of being like, you're up here so feeling so lost because that title of hero was lost to you so long ago. And it's kind of like, what does that even mean in the nature of what this world is? That it's kind of like, yeah, but my existence here kind of proves that your existence as a hero is necessary and needed, considering I'm here and you're here. So feels all ordained in a lot of ways, I'm sure. We never got clarification. I don't know if the conversation between, what's her name, Kurohara and Marcus, we don't know if they're the ones that were spying on Makina and Veltol, because we saw like someone was keeping an eye on her as she was entering her apartment. So, and they are talking about some plans they have in motion, and he wants to go see for it himself. I'm just like, there's no way you're not going to know what Veltol is going through. I mean, yes, he probably might not reach your register yet of like how much his streams are doing, but it's still the thing of you had to have kept an eye on him regardless, just because you don't like him and you've never liked him, so you're probably trying to make sure he stays in his lane. But especially considering the streaming situation does get him stronger and stronger, won't compensate fully for the lack of a familia, but it could still at least lessen that gap bit by bit. As we see the guy that beat him up in episode 1, it's like, oh, I'm going to beat you up this time. But it's like, nope. He ends up attacking Veltol. It breaks his arm, but his arm immediately regenerates, and he flicks the guy back easily. So, granted, he was ganged up on last time. He was wounded, and he was kind of outmatched. Once again, his power is like heavily reduced because people don't believe in him. But now that they do, he's on his way. So it turns out like Takahashi is doing something. So that's the thing of like, I don't know if the Marcus stuff is connected to Veltol and Makina. I'd assume it is. Like I said, someone's watching him, or whether it's related to the Takahashi stuff. Not unless we find out Takahashi was hired by them and it's like, it's all a ploy to distract Veltol or lead him into a trap. Because there's something she's trying to get access to. I don't remember if we got clarification on what it is, and she needed a bodyguard, and she hires Veltol, and that's kind of where the episode ends when he burst into the place. And yeah, like I said, I'm trying to remember. They probably did say what it was she was after. I'm just not remembering it off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm interested to see where all this ends up taking us going forward, what this job fully entails. And because I was kind of fine trusting Takahashi, but now I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, are we going to find out she's double crossing them? Maybe there's something, there's either it's going to be a thing of, nah, I'm reading way too much in it, and Takahashi isn't someone to keep an eye on, like worry about betrayal, or it might be a thing of she's not justified, but you understand like maybe what she's fighting for or whatever. It might be one of those situations. We'll have to wait to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this, because it talks about like the next episode is like Shadow of Shinjuku, so I guess seeing like the darker underbelly, and maybe that ties into Takahashi, or like I said, maybe it has to deal with like what Marcus is up to. Either way, we'll have to wait to see. Really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.